Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, The State of Education, Three Colleges Solving the Skills Gap for Workforce Readiness. My name is Karen Gonzalez, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager at the Myers-Briggs Company. We have three wonderful partners from Fullerton College, Rose State College, and Tallahassee Community College who we will introduce in a bit. But first, let me go through some quick logistics. The presentation will run for approximately 1 hour. All attendees are muted, but you can send in your questions through the question function in the webinar controls. We will have a few minutes at the end to go through a Q&A, time permitting. Now, if you're having any audio issues, try using the phone call option if you're using your computer speakers, or try restarting the webinar. We are recording today's webinar and we'll be sending out a follow-up email that includes a recording and slides in a couple of days. Now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague and our webinar moderator, Liz Connolly, VP of Education Partnerships for the Myers-Briggs Company. Go ahead, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, and welcome again, everybody. We're so happy to have you with us here today. Just wanted to take a few minutes to sort of tee up the presentation and introduce you visually anyway to our speakers. We have Janine Cirrito from Fullerton College in the North Orange County Community College District here in Southern California, where I'm also based, and I've been really privileged to be able to work with Janine this last year and a half. We have Dr. John Kane from Rose State College in Oklahoma, and then Dean Henry Ponciano from Tallahassee Community College. So we've got a good representation from across the country today. Wanted to talk a little bit about the current state of education and set some context for what Janine, John, and Henry are going to talk about this morning. And these are things I'm sure they're not new to all of us involved in education. But even prior to COVID-19, we were seeing declines in college going rates. And we know in part that's due to the growing population of first generation students, and how do we help to increase awareness about the opportunities that exist with some level of post-secondary education? How do we therefore close equity gaps, especially economic gaps across the country? And really also address the workforce needs, the number of jobs that are going to require some level of post-secondary education, and have more folks employable in those areas. Obviously, we've seen that the pandemic has, in fact, really accelerated some of the challenges that we already had. We see students pressing the pause button on going on to their education. So even if they weren't a first-gen student, they are waiting to see what happens, leading to further decline in enrollment. Of course, we have more displaced workers, particularly in hospitality and transportation, et cetera. And unfortunately, we're seeing an increase in disparities really across the board, from K-12 all the way up to post-secondary education, as we try to adapt to virtual. And so, we're faced with, how do we help to respond to these challenges and be able to continue to see improvements in closing those equity gaps and increasing awareness and improving enrollment? And so what you're going to hear our speakers talk about today is exactly how they've been addressing these challenges on their campuses. They're going to share some information with you about the demographics, so you can get a sense of which ones might be closer to your institution. And we're going to hear them talk about how we're really shifting our paradigms in education, and probably something that's been a bit overdue in general, to be able to provide more engaging virtual support, personalized education. For K-12 and for post-secondary, how can we increase dual enrollments, which is something that had started pre-pandemic but has been accelerated as well by the situation of virtual education? How can we improve the transfer process, since we see many more individuals even prior to the pandemic starting at a 2-year institution and then transferring on to a 4-year? How basically do we do a better job of helping more people learn about post-secondary education, enroll, persist, successfully complete, and then be future ready and employable? So that's my little bit. I'm going to go ahead and turn things over now to Janine to talk a little bit about some of the work that they're doing in Orange County and specifically at Fullerton College. So Janine, take it away.
Hello, how are you?
We're great, Janine.
Can we This is Janine Cirrito. I'm the coordinator of the Career and Life Planning Center at Fullerton College. I'm happy to present to you on several items, outreach for college programs, student onboarding, and partnership. Next slide, please. To give you some perspective about Fullerton College, it is one of the 114 community colleges in the California Community College system. It belongs to the North Orange County Community College District. Established in 1913, it is the oldest community college in continuous operation. For the fall of 2020, we enrolled just under 22,000 students, and from the application for educational goal, 7% indicated obtaining an associate degree only, and 15% transfer only, and 54% combined. Thanks to the dedication of our faculty and staff and the hard work of our students, Fullerton has many achievements to celebrate. To start, Fullerton College is proud of the fact that over 2/3 of our students are first-generation college students. And with the North Orange Promise, Fullerton College has experienced an increase in the number of first-time college students attending full-time. In addition, the past class included more degrees earned than any other year in the history of the college. In 2019-20, Fullerton College awarded under 3,700 degrees to over 2,100 students. In addition, Fullerton College had over 1,400 transfers to CSUs and more than 260 transfers to UCs, totaling just under 1,700 transfers in these two systems. We have been ranked in the top 5 in transfers to CSUs in the past several years and have been ranked number 1 in transfers to Cal State Fullerton for 12 years in a row. Fullerton College has recently been ranked number 1 with Latinx students and number 2 in female students transferring to the to the CSUs. From ACCJC, Fullerton College received a commendation for, quote, its radical student-centeredness where everyone is supporting the engagement and success of students, end quote. We all look forward to seeing our students cross that stage. Next slide. Fullerton College is in year 3 of Guided Pathways implementation. The Pathways Steering Committee was formed in fall of 2017 to organize and oversee campus work on guided pathways. Thousands of students and hundreds of faculty, staff, and managers have been included in the discussion, and 4 work groups were created to address the 4 pillars. Work Group 1, Creating the Path, is focused on defining Hornet pathways to organize our 200+ programs on campus. It is responsible for working with our academic programs to create clear 2- and 3-year curriculum maps. Work Group 2, Becoming a Hornet, is focused on helping prospective students becoming Hornets. This group is looking at improving the student experience from the first moment they think about coming to Fullerton College until their first day of class. They have been focusing on improving campus outreach, the application and financial aid processes, and registration. Work Group 3, Keeping Hornets on Path, is focused on helping students successfully complete their academic programs as efficiently as possible. The group also is looking at updates within our student information system, early alert, degree check, the first year experience, and guided exit. Work Group 4, Ensuring Learning, is focused on making certain that our faculty are given the best tools and training to ensure that high impact teaching practices are being used to increase student success. This group is also working on helping inform the campus discussion of our institutional and program learning outcomes. Next slide. We have been a longtime customer of the Myers-Briggs company, having purchased many of their products. I learned of the VitaNavis platform in 2018 and began researching it by contacting other campuses in and out of the state. I received positive feedback and presented my findings to different constituent groups on campus who in turn became very interested in the product. We were able to pilot the Super Strong with students, faculty, and staff, as this is vital prior to implementation with campus or district-wide licenses. The features in particular that were attractive are the mobile accessibility, granular administrative access, and unlimited assessment administrations. I will share examples of how we leverage these features within the presentation. To start, compared to other tools we've used, having unlimited assessment administrations has allowed us to open the access much more widely, providing custom access codes to specific campus programs for different purposes. Within the internship program, after students complete the Super Strong, they are asked to access the Skills Builder, where they can identify and review specific skills gained from past jobs. Each skill offers a definition, and students can rate them on 5 levels from novice through to expert, allowing them to track their skill building and development. This is also helpful as they create and strengthen their resumes. Within programs such as EOPS, Promise Program, and High School Outreach, the Super Strong has been used with prospective and incoming students where they are provided custom URLs to the Super Strong in onboarding workshops. These custom URLs provide coordinators and directors with easy tracking ability. With that said, currently enrolled students have access in a variety of ways through our student platforms and portals such as Canvas, My Gateway, and My Path. In addition, we are currently in the process of adding it to our online orientation just before students sign up for group advising to discuss their educational plans. Next slide. This leads me to sharing the feature of granular access. There are 2 types of granular access, advisor and teacher. Advisor access is given to counselors, while teacher access is given to instructors. Both can be given to the same person. With teacher access, instructors are able to create cohorts called classrooms with a maximum of 400 students. This is where instructors can obtain their customized URL access codes and where they can see their students' results in aggregate or disaggregate views. The disaggregate views can be very helpful for instructors who are teaching career-related classes, especially when offering class interpretations. In addition, the classroom feature has allowed us to market our special programs to students who show career interest in particular areas. For example, I've provided lists of students to programs for our teacher pathway and STEM programs. As for counseling appointments, I'll take the time to read a statement from one of our counselors, Deanna Smedley, who stated, quote, "As a counselor who works frequently with students who are undecided about their majors, VitaNavis has been extremely instrumental to me in assisting them. I'm able to have the student take the Super Strong under 10 minutes and review the occupational themes, personal styles, and career interests immediately in the same counseling session. It is simple and visually appealing for both counselor and student. I use the tools area with the student the most because it allows both student and me to easily navigate and explore career pathways based on their Super Strong results, with all of the necessary information such as job summary, job details, and education. This allows for an insightful conversation about students' interests and/or discovery of new interests as we continue the career exploration process," end quote. Having the Super Strong accessible within the palm of students' hands is key to being responsive to the latest generation of tech-savvy students. Speaking of mobile accessibility, this was an engaging and fun event. Last fall, I was asked to offer a workshop for a student leadership retreat that was held off campus, and I knew that using the Super Strong would be a great fit. This workshop was one of several from which students could choose throughout the event. In the workshop, I began by discussing Hollins-Riesic theory. And if you are familiar with the Strong, you might have come across several interest-themed activities involving television shows, hobbies, or cars. Well, since the leadership retreat was Avenger-themed for our Gen Z students, I created an activity that could resonate and at the same time be empowering. As I discussed each theme, I asked students if it described their interests, and then I asked them to guess an Avenger. I told students that an Avenger can certainly relate to more than one theme, hence the Holland Code. Students enjoyed the activity as it stimulated lots of fun discussion. They completed the Super Strong within several minutes, and then we discussed their themes, related occupations, personal styles, and of course, Fullerton College programs. To help students collect specific information to discuss in their next counseling appointment, I passed out a handout for them to jot down their top 3 career pathways and majors generated from their Super Strong results. Students provided great feedback. The fun part of this activity is that they all walked out of the workshop as Super Strong Avengers, and as they continued the leadership retreat. Here is the Super Strong activity used in the leadership retreat that is now accessible in fillable form on our website. Designed to be cross-curriculum activity, it is used within various classes and in cohorts, such as with our Promise students. While counselors do have advisor access within the VitaNavis platform to view Super Strong results, this activity offers a dual purpose for the student to complete some pre-work prior to meeting with an academic counselor, and it helps organize their thoughts as they are discussing their interests, personal styles, career pathways, and majors. Next slide, please. Since last year, we have had 4,000 students complete the Super Strong. We are discussing ideas to leverage the Super Strong more widely with non-feeder high schools, as well as with employer partners. While we have over a third of students who are aged 19 and younger, we have a little less than a third who are aged 25 and over. By offering the Super Strong to individuals beyond the targeted areas, we are building and strengthening relationships. At the same time, we are marketing our academic and CE or CTE programs. This is especially essential in the current remote environment where students can attend any community college. Another feature of VitaNavis that is currently worth mentioning is the unlimited assessment administration's student success profile powered by CPI 260. I'm proposing to our counseling division to leverage this assessment with students who are on academic probation. This tool examines 3 areas of personality that are related to academic success, such as growth mindset, self-sufficiency, and task completion. The tool provides students with descriptions of these areas as other knowledgeable people around them would. This is essential to self-awareness that opens up opportunities for discovery and real growth. This is an incredible academic intervention tool. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, Janine. And Janine just really provided an excellent segue for Dr. John Kane from Rose State, who has been using in their life skills course the student success profile. So you're going to hear a little bit more from John about that. And John, if you're ready to go, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. I am ready. And hello, everyone. That was a great transition into what I want to speak about today, because I do want to talk about how Rose State College is using the student success profile with students at risk, students who are struggling, students who are having a difficult, perhaps, experience with college. As was just mentioned, this is based upon the California Psychological Inventory. What's really nice about it is VitaNavis has taken a sophisticated psychological instrument and made it very accessible, first of all, to students to be able to understand. And they've molded the output, the results presented to a student in a way that really does speak to variables that are important to success in college and in the workplace. So it has multiple applications in that regard. Next slide, please. So just a real brief background. Rose State College, we are a community college in suburban Oklahoma City, about 4 miles from downtown. We have a little under 10,000 students a year, have quite a good range of degree programs, 50 plus. And I think we're fairly typical community college in that, we tend to have skew more female students. Almost half our students are minority. And we do have over 1,000 students a year who need to place into at least some form of a developmental catch-up type of class. Next slide. So just by way of a little background, I started working with VitaNavis a little over 2 years ago. My main role is Director of Institutional Research, but it's kind of an interesting blend. I also worked my way into a part-time role of career counseling. We haven't had enough resources devoted to this function, and I saw it as a real need, and so I wanted to move into this on a part-time basis. And as I did so, I looked around for some type of tools that could be used to kind of expand, scale, if you will, what we could do for students beyond limited one-on-one counseling, which we do offer, but again, what more could we do? And it was at about this time that I volunteered to be on a committee that was looking at redoing the curriculum for a course that we called Education Planning. It's a 3-credit-hour course that is targeted toward at-risk students. Next slide, please. So what we did over the course of the fall of 2018 and into 2019 is we looked at what we might do to change this course, to change the curriculum, to enhance it, to improve it, to make it more relatable to students. My estimate is that the vast majority, probably 90+% of the students who are taking this course, and we have a little over 1,000 students a year who take it, the vast majority of them are taking it because it's pretty much required that they take it. They either are struggling academically, or they are on probation or whatnot. And so we focused on how can we change the curriculum to improve topics such as goal setting, how to become a better student, what does it take to be successful in college, how can we enhance their self-awareness, and most definitely get them thinking about a career plan, because if we can get them focused on why they should finish, what they're interested in, it clearly will be more motivating. We also wanted to move away from textbooks in this area, none of which had been found to really be exactly what we wanted, and what we've ultimately done is moved all the faculty created the content and moved it onto Canvas. And the bottom line, I think, of this course is we wanted to help students see their experience in college as part of their life journey and help them become believers in themselves, which many of these students struggle with. So as I was going through this, I was like, my gosh, I'm looking at what I've learned from talking to VitaNavis, and I said, this course, this platform aligns perfectly with our where we're headed with this curriculum in 2 ways. Yes, the career and interest exploration and the super strong, and we do use it there. But it also, this course was already doing a few things with the topic of growth mindset and resiliency. And I saw that now here is an objective, if you will, instrument, assessment, a tool that students could use to put the spotlight on themselves a little bit. That wasn't just reading about the idea conceptually, it was a way to now involve them in it in a very personal way. And as was noted before, what's great about the assessment is that it tries to give the student feedback about how a knowledgeable other person would comment on that person's behavior. And it's also, in a sense, a reflection on how that student approaches life, their attitudes toward life. Next slide. So just a little, again, brief profile of the fall last year, actually. We had 587 students enrolled. Again, the vast majority of these students were ultimately going to need at least one developmental course. Math is the predominant one, but English is close behind. The vast number of these are also freshmen. They take it early, and they may not be their first semester at Rose State, but you know, they haven't completed 30 credit hours yet. They've maybe completed a few, maybe they've had struggles, and that's how we're again redirecting them to be in this course. Next slide. So what we ended up doing as I worked kind of simultaneously on this committee, and we had now been adopting or trialing the platform, I personally taught some class periods of the now College and Life Strategies course as we were kind of working through in this kind of spring 2019 and even into fall of or summer of summer of 19. We I went into the classrooms myself and did sessions on both the student success profile and the super strong. We at the same time also encouraged the faculty to be using it in the fall of 2019 and into the spring of 2020. And we now that we've officially put all the content on Canvas, we've done away with the textbook, it's become a core ingrained element to the curriculum starting this fall. And the way we transitioned this, we went through this process, is the folks at VitaNavis trained myself on both instruments, as well as I recruited a small team to do that with me. So we have probably at least 15 faculty that teach this course throughout the year, some of which are adjuncts and some are full-time. But I had a couple of faculty that went through that training with me, and our associate dean from our humanities division do this with me as well. Then I took all that material and I scheduled sessions with the faculty to train them on how to use both of these instruments and integrate them into the curriculum. And every semester, I stay in touch with all the faculty that are teaching it. I make sure they don't have any questions. I make sure we all understand what links to use. I make sure that any questions that do arise, they know how to get in touch with me. So that's how we've kind of gone forward with it from an implementation standpoint. Next slide. What we've done with the student success profile, I think most faculty are doing, although this semester has been a little odd with COVID, but in general, we've carved out time in a class period for students to get logged in and to take the assessment, because it does take, this one's longer, it takes about 35 minutes to take. And we want to really make sure students take the time, they get through it. If they have any questions, someone's there to help them. What we then did is we put together a reflective exercise. We wanted to make sure that the students had to do something with this material. They get a wonderful report when it's done, and they can print it out. And there are actually, as was mentioned before, 3 areas with subcategories. So they actually get a report on 10 different factors, like again, growth mindset or task orientation. And it gives them not only comments about how others likely view their behavior, but it gives them helpful tips, things to consider, things they might want to try, how they might want to do something different going forward. And so we gave them a questionnaire with these 7 different reflective exercises, and faculty have picked and chosen from those, modified them, I think, sometimes for their own, in their own way. But we have found that, you know, when students have to engage with this, they also get a lot more out of it. And I know at least one instructor who's also then, when they do an integrative exercise at the end of the course, they specifically are focusing them back through their student success profile. Next slide. So kind of just some brief results before I get to some comments, because I really want to share comments from students and from faculty. To date, we've had 753 students take the student success profile. And as I said, there's a lot of data in there. I just pulled out 2 aspects that I thought were maybe noteworthy amongst many noteworthy points. One of the areas that they get feedback on is orientation toward themselves. And the vast majority of our students score in a category that's considered critical, both critical of themselves, and they they have difficulty trusting others as well. So it kind of works both ways. And you know, I should say, by the way, that this data is in a sense very reinforcing as to why you might suspect students are struggling, why they're in this course, why they're having challenges with college curriculum. They're struggling to believe in themselves, and they also just don't trust others. Also, 85%, they have an orientation more toward the very much here and now. So they don't really plan very well. They tend to they don't, I'm sorry, I'm getting, I apologize. So they also become more sensitive to stress as well. Okay, next slide. So what I want to do next is share some comments from faculty and then from students. I think the faculty have a very unanimous opinion that it has helped. I think this first I'll just kind of let you read these to yourself, I think, but you know, the first one I think is very relevant because in this one instructor's perspective, it helps students think about themselves in ways that they perhaps didn't before. And they start to see how they have a role in really creating their future instead of just being reacting to events around them. Another one was that, you know, that it puts the results into words and example concepts that they may have kind of known before, but they've never thought about very deeply. And again, that's one nice thing about it. It puts it into a nice narrative. It's not full of numbers or jargon or, you know, score numbers. It gives them simple text that they can relate to. One faculty person said, I think the profile addresses three key things. It helps them perhaps become aware of things they hadn't accepted about themselves before. It helps them realize things or see things that they didn't even realize about themselves. And maybe most importantly, it starts to move their attitude toward change. Next slide. I know a lot of times we like to have data. I don't have a lot of quantifiable data, but I did do a short survey with 2 courses. It probably reflects about 30 respondents. But I asked them 3 questions. And again, as you can see here, a significant number of them really felt that the student success profile was valuable. It either helped raise their self-awareness, it helped them, 3/4 of them felt that it helped them be a little better prepared for moving forward with their academic studies. And virtually everyone thought that, yes, I think this is an opportunity students should always be given to take. Next slide. Okay, so I want to close with a number of quotes from students. And again, you can read these, but I think a lot of them are very powerful. You know, one student said it was probably the favorite part of the class, taking the student success profile, that it really helped. A lot of times we hear, I've seen comments in the feedback forms we've used that, you know, I can connect self-awareness with self-confidence. If I understand myself a little better, it helps me build my self-confidence. Next slide. What was the most important thing perhaps you learned about yourself? Several, I think probably one of the most common ones I think I've seen is what's on the far right side here. I need to get out of my comfort zone. I need to push myself more. I see that in the results. How can I do that? And feel good about what I'm trying, to be oriented toward trying a little more. Another comment, I need to reflect on my self-control in stressful situations. Another common one I've seen is, you know, I do tend to be pretty cynical about myself if I stop and think about it. And the one in the middle is great because a lot of students, I think, don't do well because they don't ask for help, and her results pointed that out for her. I need to be more comfortable asking for help and with more unstructured environments, because when I am in those situations, I tend to get anxious or nervous. So it really raises their awareness of these types of psychological issues that they're working through. Next slide. And just a few more. I thought this was kind of a very succinct one. I didn't realize about this before. My mom's always told me that this was the case, but I didn't believe it. So again, this speaks back to this concept of giving them what hopefully can be viewed as an objective, distant, third party, other party perspective. Again, comments about I need to work on my self-confidence. Nothing surprised me in the report, but you know, I never really sit down to think about it. I've never thought about all of this. And you know, it occurred to me as I read that quote and putting the slides together that we think about trying to help students become lifelong learners. And maybe part of what hopefully they should get from college, and at least from this course, is becoming lifelong reflectors. How do we teach them a skill that relates to looking at themselves and understanding who they are? That's something maybe we don't spend enough time on. And I think this starts to chip away at that. What surprised I'm sorry. They do largely agree with the results, but not completely. And I think this is a positive because it shows they're engaging with the material. You know, they will say, I agree with 9 out of 10, but there's this one thing that you know, I'm not sure about. Whether that's true or whether they just haven't come to accept that that's true about them, and maybe they have a certain defensiveness about it. Nevertheless, it's getting them to work on the material in a critical way. Last slide, and just to wrap it up. So closing thoughts, you know, students are finding this very helpful. They often agree with the findings, which I think is a good thing, but it's a way of them pulling it all together for them and seeing it in one place. They indicate that it helps them think about themselves and raises some central issues. And lastly, I think the faculty have continued to see how it really reinforces some of the key concepts that we're trying to get across to them in this course about how they can believe in themselves, how they can think about what it will take to turn them around and help them become more successful, both in college and in life. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That was great. This is the first time I've been able to hear more of a deeper dive into the work that you all are doing. And I think it will be helpful for Janine as she continues to advocate for usage in the North Orange County District, especially at Fullerton. And now we're going to segue to Henry, who I think is going to really pull all of this even more together and talking about the ways that TCC has helped to personalize the educational process and engagement process with students. So Henry, if you're ready, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Liz. Thank you first and foremost to my fellow panelists for doing a great job of setting me up, and thank you to all those who are in attendance. My name again is Henry Ponciano. I'm the Dean of Student Success and Retention here at Tallahassee Community College. So let me start by sharing a little bit about Tallahassee Community College and the students we serve. This fall, we're a little bit over 11,000 students. We make up one of the what I'm calling the Great 28 institutions that make up our Florida college system. We're in the capital city that unfortunately has a distinction as the poorest zip code. We serve 3 very sort of distinct counties: Leon County, which is where Tallahassee is; Wakulla, which is one of our rural counties, made up of 82%, the population is 82% white; and Gadsden, which is the only minority county here in this state. We're in the backyard of 2 great institutions, Florida State University and FAMU, Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University as well, one of our HBCU institutions here. Next slide. Because of our proximity to FSU and FAMU, we have sort of a unique profile as it relates to our students. About 50% of our students are actually out of district, and our sort of age of students tends to be more traditional age, and about half of our students attend TCC full time with the goal of transferring to one of the 2 state institutions. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we know is that we wanted to work towards making sure that all of our students had the same amount of success who attended TCC. And so we knew that in order to do that, we had to look at our data and really think about how do we make sure the experience of all students is one that leads to success. One of the things that we found out, and when we looked at our data, when we look at our graduation rates, our 3-year graduation rates, 26% of our African American students were graduating, 40% Hispanic, and 45% white students. So we knew that we had to work on this and make sure that we had all the tools and practices in place to support these students. Just as an example, specifically our Godby High School, which is one of our main feeders, the majority of the students who that were coming to our institutions, we noticed they weren't having the same amount of success. So here we are in the backyard of this institution, and most of the students that were coming here were not finishing. So we had to sort of change what we were doing. And so if you go to the next slide, we started thinking about how do we move forward and what do we need to do? Thinking about who needs to be involved. Again, what do we need to do? And how do we sort of start working with students differently? What sort of, how do we personalize this experience, and how do we sort of check in and work with our students day to day to ensure that students have the same success, and really identifying barriers, and more importantly, looking at math. We know that math can be a barrier for our students. So how do we sort of create a sort of pathway of success for our students, and as it relates to how we teach the course and when we offer the courses and so on. Next slide. So for us, it was, if you could picture, a student in the middle, and then thinking about what is that ecosystem of support looks like for that student, what needs to be in place, what experience do they need to have in order to have the success. And so if we go to the next slide, it really started with sort of asking a question that you see there. What do we need to do? What change do we need to make to ensure that students are successful? And so that led us to have some serious conversations. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see, and I understand you have a copy of this, and so I don't expect anyone try to read this, but it helped us really think about what did our institutional data tell us, and what do we need to do to ensure student success? And so looking at our data and holding what we call design thinking sessions with our faculty, students, and staff, we sort of looked at what do we need to identify as the possible barriers, the strategies, and the success factors. So this sort of document is sort of this organic document sort of helped guide us as we move forward to implement what we end up calling the culture of care, which stands for the connections, the academics, resources, and engagement piece. If you go to the next slide, if you could this sort of is the visual of the CARE model. One of the things that when I talked about the data, when we looked at our Sensi data, we saw that a majority of students were looking for that early connections with our faculty and staff, with our advisors, and really needing information about their careers and their goals, and really wanting to have that opportunity for someone to sit down with them and really help them think about what they were doing, why they were here, and what that would mean as relates to the careers and jobs that they were interested in. And so this is sort of the guiding principle here, is the visualization of that CARE model that we implemented. And then if you go to the next slide, again, was really stepping back and thinking about what's happening inside and outside the classroom to support student success. And so what are some of the learning outcomes, and how do we infuse sort of that conversation about careers, being career readiness, financially literate, and really preparing them to make that transition. So you go to the next slide. As Janine, we're also a guided pathway institution, and so what the CARE model allowed us to do is sort of think about how we operationalize what we're doing. And for us, it began with really thinking about how we can use the super strong. So if you go to the next slide. So when we talked about the success that we wanted students to have, it began with our developing a strategic plan and being intentional about the access and our different points of access. in the pipeline? How do we strengthen that? And so for us, we have several ways through grant-funded programs, through enrollment and so forth, and thinking about how do we expand that to all students and what needs to happen to ensure that those students have the success they need through the K-12 system and then continues through here at TCC. And so we begin, if you go to the next slide of that, sort of, again, you've heard this throughout the presentations, is that personalized experience. And what does that mean to us? And how do we move forward? And for us, it meant by having those conversations and using the information that we learn about students through the Super Strong to guide the experience from what they register for and so on. And so one of the things that we did is that all students who come here, either whether they're new to college or transfer, they have to do new student orientation. And before they do previously the on-campus orientation, now it's all online, there's a pre-orientation where they would have to take the Super Strong and then follow that with a meeting with a group advising session where they actually have the orientation and schedule their classes. So if you go to the next slide, what was exciting about the Super Strong is I think initially we thought about, okay, this would be great to use in orientation, and you'll see that we've used it with quite a few students. And then started rethinking about how do we make sure that we can use it with all of our students, regardless of what program they're in and what they're interested in, whether it's a degree or a certificate. And so you see that we've sort of adopted it in different areas throughout the college. So all students, anyone who's coming to the college, is being touched by the Super Strong, and really allowing us to use the information to help students stay on their path. Go to the next slide. Again, another sort of slide that I don't want anyone to try to read, but when we think about sort of making those connections and how the information we've gathered from the Super Strong helps us, is really making sure that students see what this means and the information we gather through the Super Strong. What does it mean, how they move forward, and how do we connect them to our academic communities? And so this is sort of what it looks like at the macro level, and helps us have a discussion with students about what they're interested in, what they might be interested in. And so if we go to the next slide, that's sort of how we operationalize this, and looking at sort of the practical applications is, well, now this helps us sort of think about that first semester schedule and what it should look like based on what we learned about the students who've taken the Super Strong. And so just to give you a sample, you'll see that this allows us to really be intentional about the courses they're taking. Obviously, there's some classes they'll need to take regardless, but what are those 1 or 2 other classes that they'll need that's related to their career? If we look at the next slide, again, I talked about the student in the middle and thinking about what we've done to support them, you'll see that it's really the Super Strong really helped us sort of connect and find out more about students to make sure that we can operationalize our care model, even through these sort of difficult times happening. And what's really exciting is sort of what we've been able to do, even virtually. And just to give you one example, sort of with how do we engage with students? And we had an event where we had over 600 students participate in one of our sort of parties. So again, it's looking for ways to make students feel like they're part of the institution, even through what's happening now. If we go to the next slide, surprise, surprise, this is probably one of the most exciting things that students are happy about is that it's user-friendly, it can be on their phone. As you know, students, that's where they live. And so having this feature is really helpful for students. What I like about the printable records is sort of that it allows us for the advisors and the faculty to really have this information when they meet with students and have conversations with them. So the way it's summarized, it's very easy for students to read and for us to use when we meet with them. Then if you go to the next slide, again, having this information really helps us think about, again, sort of what's happening inside and outside the classroom, and from what we learn about our students, our whole student body. And so when you look at sort of what our students might be interested in, it's really helped us, it really supported some of the decisions that we were making. So just for an example, we went ahead and increased our seats availability for our nursing program. And it was largely due to the information that we were gathering, including what we know about our students who are interested in healthcare and specifically our nursing program. Like John mentioned, one of the things that's exciting is what we're excited about with the Super Strong is, one, students find it very helpful, and the information they learn about themselves, it sort of helps us as well. And we know that if students are undecided, then they're more than likely not going to persist. So helping students define their goal and their purpose, we know equals persistence. So and having this from the very beginning really helps ensure that we're having constructive conversations that help move students forward. Last, again, you get to sort of how has sort of the Super Strong impacted us and what we do. Our academic advisors recently, all our academic advisors completed the Super Strong certifications, again, to really help students make those connections between what they're studying and their careers. So we're excited about them completing the certification. How we teach, knowing who's in our classroom and their learning styles, is really helped us sort of think about what we need to do to ensure that students have success. As I mentioned, really not only looking at our sort of traditional students, we're looking at even drilling down to some of our special populations and thinking about how we can help them succeed as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. That was wonderful. A lot of great information, and thanks as well to John and to Janine. Such good stuff. I think at this point we will open it up for questions. Karen, I don't know if we've had any questions coming in that we have to address.
Yes, we have a few. So we got one actually, this is for John when you were presenting your section. We had someone that asked, how do you require at-risk students to enroll in a course without identifying that they're at risk and violating FERPA?
Well, I don't know that I can't probably speak to the details of how we do this. I mean, they all are working with an academic advisor. You know, I'm not doing it, or they're all somehow identified through academic advising and the other counseling procedures on campus. But I'm not aware of the specifics of how they're you know, asked to take the course. I know that those are some of the requirements that we have. So.
All right, thank you, John. All right, so we had another question here. No, that's okay. Thank you. So we had a question here. This is for Henry. So someone asked, what is the 30% equity gap? 30% lower graduation rates for which populations?
Sorry, yeah, graduation rates of our African American students. Great question.
Great, thank you. And someone asked as well, and this is when you were presenting the C.A.R.E flyer. So they asked, can you share a copy of the C.A.R.E flyer that you shared? It was a bit difficult to see on the slide.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
Perfect, and we can send that off to folks when we do the follow-ups as well. Let's see, we had another, and Liz, this was for you, and we can also send this to the group as well when we do follow-ups. But the question was, where do the data from the slides on the current state of education and accelerant to existing challenges come from? Would you be willing to share the sources?
Yeah, absolutely. And the data comes from different sources, including the National Clearinghouse. I think one of those slides was from NCES. But all of the slides will be shared after. So the entire presentation will be shared so you can take a closer look and actually read and be able to see. And if it's not clear, we're happy to follow up directly as well.
Great, thank you. And let's see, another one just came through. Let's see, once students complete the Super Strong, then who has access to that information?
I'll take that on behalf of the group. The access really is going to depend upon how you assign it as an institution, but typically access would be provided to folks like our panelists today, advisors, faculty members in which the student is perhaps in a class for a student success or career exploration or FYE course. So it's really going to depend upon the relationship of the individuals on campus and the role that they have on campus as well. And by the way, just something to point out, it's a little bit different with VitaNavis. Once a student signs in and completes the Super Strong, they own that information. They own their VitaNavis account. So we didn't mention this, but we work with both K-12 as well as post-secondary. And we have, in fact, the school district in which I reside is a partner of ours. So if a student leaves high school and goes to a college that doesn't currently partner with us, they still have access to the platform. And therefore, they can also share their information with their parents, which we think is very important, particularly for first-generation students, for them to be able to let their parents know what opportunities exist that they may not be aware of. They may not know of certain careers. And for our Latinx and Hispanic families, the students can share with their parents or guardians the fact that the platform is available from the assessment all the way through, both in English and Spanish. So if that's necessary to help facilitate those conversations, that's a benefit for the students as well.
Great. Okay, so we had another that asked, thank you, John, for sharing your section, what you're doing at the at-risk program. Which other areas besides a course such as the one Rose State shared could the student success profile be used?
What other programs could it be used in?
Yeah, I think they're asking. Yeah, I think they're asking in what other, basically what other ways can they use student success profile? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's an interesting question, because we've been trying to think about where else and how else we can use it. And I've certainly, you know, used it in private counseling sessions, but I think there are other places on campus that would really benefit from it. For example, our TRIO program. I've had some initial conversations there about maybe having for the, you know, the federal TRIO program we have one on campus. We have another program on campus that's in partnership with the state of Oklahoma for adults that are struggling to find work and come back. Want to come back to college, and before they start college, having them take it. So I think there are other places like that where we can try to reach students, and really, I think any student could benefit from it. So there are some other things that we're going to be trying to think about there as well, because anyone benefits from this kind of self-reflective process. It's not just at-risk students, but it is a little longer assessment. You know, it takes 30, as I said, 35 or so, 40 minutes to go through. So we have to kind of weigh how we're going to, you know, implement that just in general around campus. But those are some other places that we're starting to look at having all the students take it.
Thank you, John. And I think you have time for one more question. Someone asked, can you speak a bit more around the dual enrollment and displaced worker program? And Henry, I think this one's for you, because you had mentioned that in your presentation.
Yeah, so I'll start with our displaced workers. We have this campaign called Be Essential, where we're looking at the employer needs and matching up students who are need employment and providing that training. And so we're taking that opportunity to really try to help students identify those possible opportunities that are a perfect match for what's available. Dual enrollment, we started. We have a great relationship with our area high schools, and really thinking about how do we sort of initiate these conversations prior to students starting TCC. And so thinking of using the fact that they are our students while in high school to help them start that conversation about their careers and their goals.
Great, thank you, Henry. And we got a couple of questions. I know we're pretty much out of time, but just one more. This one just came through. It's who underwrites the cost of the platform? Is it career services, student equity, academic affairs, or students?
I can take that one, Karen, because I can speak to beyond just our partners here today. It's oftentimes a combination of offices on campus, as you've heard from our panelists. It touches, different departments on campus. So very often it's through a VP of Student Services, sometimes through academic affairs. Sometimes our partners are using grant funds through things like workforce development, as is the case here in California with many of our partners. So it really depends, but I would say that while typically the Myers-Briggs company has strong relationships in career centers, as you've heard each of our presenters talk about, we have come to understand in education that we need to start talking about the ultimate end, i.e. the ultimate career, early on, and not have that be a process that's as the student's getting ready to complete. So while the career centers, people like Janine in particular, are always a part of these types of conversations, really it's a broader spectrum of people across campus, and the funding coming from higher levels, usually being driven by someone at a VP level. And if any of the partners that presented with us today want to add to that, we certainly welcome it. But I think hopefully that helps to address that question.
Great, thank you, Liz. And so we've run out of time, so we're a minute over. So I want to thank everyone for joining the call today. We really appreciate you being here, and we also thank our presenters as well. You all did an amazing job, so thank you so much for sharing your stories and what you're doing on your campuses. So please look for an email from us from the Myers-Briggs company, so that will include the slides from today and the recording, and also look out for a white paper that the Myers-Briggs is publishing on the state of education. So we will make sure that once that's published in November, we will send that link directly to you. So as soon as that's ready, you will have that. And thank you so much, everyone, again for your time. And I will end the call now. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.